All right. Last time I said I was going to finish this, and that was a lie. This time, I really don't see how there's any way that I could not finish this today, and maintain any kind of workflow. So, yeah, we've done the pencil, obviously, which you can no longer see, even though it's still there. And we did the line art and the ink last time, and this time we're just going to go through and figure out the tone. Now, I was looking at this off camera, didn't do any work on it, but I was looking at it with my eyes, and I thought to myself, this is going to be really easy and really fast to do this tone just based on what is in the Ito version. So there's a couple ways that today's episode could go. It's going to be either like last time where I said this is going to be really fast and easy, and then I took an hour to do it. Or it could be maybe I'm right and it'll take me like 5 minutes, and then maybe we'll try a couple of different methods and see what I like the best. I'm also going to do the lettering and the word bubbles, so maybe I'll be an absolute madman and try to hand letter it, just like an old school real cartoonist, instead of just relying on Blambot fonts for everything like a modern cartoonist does, like a person who is the person you're looking at right now. So hey, we'll figure it out. This is what this whole series is about: figuring out how to do things that other artists have done, and also the meta narrative, of course, is me figuring out how to make videos for a YouTube channel. Woke up to 6 subscribers the other day. That is actually pretty cool. I was firmly expecting 0 for a very, very long time. So you know what? It's the little victories. And my Kickstarter is coming to a close for Maru Kiru. And I'll just talk about that a little bit as I do some touch-ups to my line art. I write a comic called Maru Kiru Destroy the Moon, and I've finished 198 pages of that, and I have 2 volumes, and I'm raising money on my Kickstarter for second printing of the first volume and for first printing of the second volume. So, it's a fantasy action comic. Again, if you're here on this channel, you probably know me from reading Maru Kiru or from reading World Ends in Fire or Circuit Champ or one of my other comics. So maybe you've heard me talk about all this stuff already. Maybe you're already back in the campaign, which would be really awesome. But that we were up to 81 backers. I just saw we got our 81st backer, and I was hearing somebody talking about this the other day, and I should really start keeping track of these people who I see talking about these things, so I can at least give you a name, somebody you can go out and maybe seek out on your own to listen to them, because usually I have positive things to say. But anyways, this person was talking about how, in the era of online, we tend to start thinking about things in the thousands and the millions when it comes to reach and following, and like what can be deemed of as successful, what can be deemed of as good, when it comes to who you're reaching with your work. And they were saying like, you get people who are saying things like, my newsletter's not successful, I've only got 75 subscribers. Or, that's very close to home of what's going on with my Kickstarter right now. We've got 81 backers. And I don't say only 81 backers, because 81's kind of a huge deal for me, I remember when, and this is the thing that goes on to talk about this, and that's the feeling that I really get, is to say, like, imagine that you are in a room, a physical location, with your thing, and 75 is the example, 81 for my real life example. 81 people show up in this room and they say, we want your book and we want the extras from you, and we want to read what you've created, we want to engage with you on what you've created. 81 people, that'd be overwhelming in real life to actually see that in the flesh. And it feels different online, but you kind of have to remember that the people that you're reaching are real people, and they're out in the world, and you're going to put some books in a box, and you're going to slap a label on it and ship it out to them, and it's going to fly across the world, and it's going to land in their hands and reach them, and they're going to read it. And that's just like a super cool thing. And 81 people is like a big deal to me, and 6 people even on this little YouTube channel I got going on, it is a big deal. So it's like every person is a person, right? And that's just a cool thing. That being said, let's go to the moon with some of this stuff, right? Anyways, all right. I really don't want to fiddle too much with the line art. I did all of that yesterday. There's just a couple of things that I noticed when I was looking at this with my eyes, and I said, okay, we need to fix just a couple of things, and then we'll be good to go. And even now that I'm doing some of these, I'm like, nope, actually, they don't need to be fixed. They're fine the way they are. First, I thought I needed to really thicken the lines around the ribbon to make it work, but now that I'm trying to do that, I think that maybe I'm nitpicking. I'm doing too much, and I don't need to worry about it. My stated goal at the start of this was to pick up on speed. Now, obviously, I failed on that pretty hard in terms of you've seen the full process throughout the videos, and I know I keep stopping to turn to the camera and talk to you about different stuff, but normally when I'm working stuff, I do panels in much shorter time periods than 3 hours or 2.5 hours or however long this video series is going to end up being. So usually I'm working faster than that already, and I'm talking when I'm doing stuff in full color. So, but again, we're learning and we're talking, and it's been really educational for me, and hopefully you've gotten something out of it as well. Even if it's just enjoying watching me struggle. So we're going to make a new layer. I'm going to lock this whole folder of the inks because I don't want to touch on this anymore, accidentally, what have you. We're going to make a new layer above that, and we're going to set the opacity to 20%. Now, I might mess with that later and raise it, make it a little more thin, because looking over what Ito's got here, it's really just one gray tone, right? And it's in the background. I'm pointing at it with my finger, you can't see. It's in the background, and it's on the dress for the most part. And it's really all one tone. And so we're gonna start at 20%. The reason being, and this is something I picked up from Lukasz Kowalczyk, who's a Polish cartoonist of a great accomplishment, and somebody who I've learned a lot from over the years. And one of the things that he told me was that when you're doing tone for printing, you want to do your light tone at 20% and your dark tones at 40%. And anything higher than that is going to print too dark and is going to muddy things up. So that's something that I try to keep in mind as I'm working on this, because a lot of times I like really dark, saturated colors and tones, and so I'm working on the digital front and about publishing things online before I get them in print. I tend to think a lot of stuff will make it darker, make it more saturated, and that's not always a good thing. You gotta kind of fight against some of those instincts sometimes. So I'm gonna start at 20%. We're gonna see how that looks, and if we go with a single tone, we might darken it up to 40. And if we end up doing 2 levels of tone, which again is not really what happened in the Ito drawing, then maybe we will play with some 20 and some 40. So you zoom in real close on this, and you can see that this is really a screen tone. It gets blurry the more you go in on it, which we can do in CSP, but I don't really care for it. So I don't know if this is cheating or not, but this is one of those things that I need to kind of figure out and what the real thing is. But I'm just going to do black at 20% opacity, and maybe we'll play with the screen tones later in the episode just to see what they look like. But all right, so this is actually pretty simple, and what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to make everything that's not her skin gray. And then we're going to do some rim light from there. So, but first, everything that's not a flesh tone is going to become gray. A couple ways to do this. I'm doing it in the slow way. Now the fast way would have been to do something that I talked about last video, which would have been to put all of the background inks on their own layer, which I actually did, but then I think I might have drawn some of it on the figure layer, so I'm not going to be able to do my selection. But the fast way would have been to do all the background inks on their own layer and then make them invisible. And actually, let's just check. Yeah, see, some of my touch-ups ended up on the figure layer, but the fast way would have been to do all of the background inks on another layer, use the select tool to grab all of that and then just fill it in like that, which doesn't look bad. I think we can actually get away with that. I love when we can get away with stuff. It's not cheating, it's using technology. It's, I'm going to talk about that a lot, I guess, because it's like we live now in a time where you really do need to explain the difference between what is using a tool to further your art and what is using technology to cheat. And the line really is when it stops being a product of human labor, right? So this is me using a tool and still directing it with my intent and with my hand. And yes, it's making things a lot faster. It's taking shortcuts, but it's all my original work. Even though I'm copying something, I'm doing it by hand. I'm not tracing over anything. I'm looking at this and I'm drawing it myself over here, and I'm using some tools to speed up that process. What I'm not doing is just grabbing this image and writing my name on it, or grabbing this image and smashing it together with a couple other images and writing my name on it and saying that I did it. So again, there's gray areas in lots of the ways that people produce art, but those gray areas are really not all that gray, honestly. When you sit down and think about it, it becomes pretty obvious at what point you can say, okay, no, you didn't do that, you stole that. And it's unless you're being deliberately obtuse, it's pretty easy to figure out when something is a result of handwork and human labor and when something is the result of either straight up like image gen use, which is obviously like that's art theft, and or even something like. So, because I definitely know you would get people who would tell you that like, oh no, I'm pose stealing here or something like that, which is something that's absolutely preposterous. Pose stealing, I really don't think is a thing. I use something that I use as a kind of as a visual reference in a lot of my comics is I will reference poses from like JoJo, because JoJo is an amazing manga to use for pose references. And I definitely know that there are people who have the opinion they're just like, oh, that's pose stealing. I'm like, what the hell is pose stealing? I'm sure this is going to come up again. I'm sure somebody will challenge me on that. One of the 6 of you out there will challenge me on that. But it's kind of beside the point right now. Using the select tool, using the paint bucket, that's not cheating. You can do that. That's encouraged. That improves your workflow. That's working smarter, not harder. Because I could have gone through here by hand, and in the time that I've talked to you about this, I probably could have done the whole thing by hand. But it's much faster, and you're not really losing any of the human touch by speeding it up like that. So I'm cool with it. And we're even going to take some out later too. So anyways, the dress I am going to end up doing by hand just because there's too many fiddly bits in the line art for the select tool to really work correctly. So I am going to do that part by hand. You end up sometimes with a situation on stuff like this where it's like, is the ribbon white? The ribbon's white. It's like you can use the select tool, but you end up doing so much to fix the errors that the select tool made that it would have just been faster to do it by hand. And when I do my coloring, that happens to me a lot, where like it's like I can draw around with the select tool and select areas, or I can draw a color outline and fill it in. And honestly, it takes less time to do it by hand in some of those cases. Do a bad job of explaining that to you with my words. Case like this, now I've got a full outline. I can grab select. I usually bump out to kind of, if you don't bump out the selected area by 1 or 2 pixels and you do a fill-in like that, it tends to leave a border. I'll show you an example. You see that kind of visible white border where your selection was. If you use this expand selected area, and I do like about 1 or 2 pixels, usually that's enough to take care of it, and that just fills in properly with no artifacting. So. I'm a bedroom cartoonist. I don't get out much. I was at a convention, my first convention this year, and it was in my home state, and which is something that doesn't really happen in my home state very often. And I could afford the table, and so I pushed myself and I got out there and I did it. It was great. And while I was there, you meet, most of the people you meet at these things are good sorts. That's what I have decided. Maybe that's just a little bit of optimism on my part, because I want people to be good, just in general. But some people are dicks. And while I was out there, I don't know if you've seen, but I have I've got a lot of posters available, and one of my favorite ones is of Power from Chainsaw Man. And I've got a really cool Power poster, and this guy was coming around looking at tables, and he was with a couple of guys, and they clearly, I don't know, this is my thing in the comics industry, is I don't really know who anybody is. I'm self-taught on this stuff. I didn't start until I was in my 20s. I didn't really start reading comics seriously until I wanted to make them. I came about this all weird about. So I don't tend to know who a lot of people are. So maybe these guys were names and that's why they were acting like it. But they definitely believed very strongly in themselves, put it that way. Anyways, this guy comes up to my table and he looks at my Power poster. He says, "Oh wow, this is really good." I said, "Oh, thank you." He says, "Did you do this with markers?" And I said, "No, it's all digital. I do it in CSP." And he goes, "Oh wow. Normally when I see digital stuff, it's really obvious that it was done in digital, but this almost looks like you did it for real." And I'm like, you can't. I mean, you can go off on people. I don't like to. But I was pretty peeved by that, because digital art is real, and if you are a digital artist, I will validate you. What you do is real. It's still handwork. It's still human labor. It's just a different tool, and it means you don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on art supplies every year. You have to spend several $100s one time, hopefully getting a good setup, and then that setup will last you for a decade at least, which is kind of where I am right now, where I put a bunch of saved up my pennies and put a bunch of money into this up front. I've been using this thing now for 10 years. And that's just one of those moments that was like, oh, I guess not everybody is going to be super friendly at these things, is going to be super embracing of what I do. And it really kind of gets your goat when someone is there's kind of like backdoor compliments where it's like, oh, you did a good job for being a hack fraud. But I guess I take great pride in being a hack fraud. Hacks have the most fun. I feel like passion is probably the most important aspect of anybody who makes comic books or illustrations. I think if you love what you do, it shows in your work. And people can tell the difference between somebody who says they love what they do and actually does, and people who just say they love what they do because they feel like it's going to get them some kind of attention. I don't know. I'm not sure that there's anybody who's foolish enough to be like a fake, passionate comic book creator. No true comic book creator. I said I would bust out more philosophy 101 crap. No true Scotsman is one of my favorite logical fallacies. What's your favorite logical fallacy? Tell me in the comments. When I took a bit of philosophy when I was in college, and I'm not entirely sure what we thought it was going to be, but it was mostly instructions on how to argue really pettily about semantics. Because that's what a lot of philosophy boils down to is logic and logical arguments. And I feel like the people who people try real hard not to remember what they learned in Philosophy 101. But like no true Scotsman, right? That's a logical fallacy. Because it's like, you imagine that you're having somebody who's telling you about what it is that people in Scotland do, and they'll say something like, well, no Scotsman would wear a yellow hat. Stupid example. But then somebody stands up, and they've got a Scottish flag on their shirt, and they're wearing a yellow hat, and they say, but I'm Scottish. I'm wearing a yellow hat. And so the first speaker, without missing a beat, will say something, well, no, true Scotsman would wear a yellow hat. And so here we go. This is your problem, right? Is that it's like we've immediately disproven your point. And you've worked around to say, well, you're not a real Scotsman because no true Scotsman would wear a yellow hat. And it's like, okay, that's based on nothing. That's based entirely on bias. And we've now conclusively proven that that's based entirely on bias. So that's one of my favorite logical fallacies. All right, so we got gray everywhere, right? And I was originally thinking that 20% was going to be too light, but I think it actually looks really good. And I think that 40% would be too dark. And we can find out right away. See, oh, look how dark that is. I also like that. See what the difference? 30? When it's one flat tone, it really doesn't make a difference. Kind of just... We're going to stick with the 20. But alright, I'm going to do some interesting stuff here now. You see how Ito's got like this kind of rim light around the edges of the dress on both sides. So, that means that the light source is coming from behind, theoretically. And in actuality, who cares about a light source? I mean, but there's also some random lines on the dress that I don't really know about. There's one here. I'm not 100% sure where the light source is supposed to be, but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I feel like light source is one of those things that somebody wants to be really petty. They'll come at you for, like, oh, your light source is all screwed up. What do you have to say to that? And I'll say, no true light source matters. There's so many different schools of thought on illustration and what things are important and what things are not. And for me, I'm a purveyor of vibes, right? It's a vibes-based economy. And if I can capture the feeling that I want to capture, then I don't really care so much about the mechanical approach. And that's why I'm a hack. It is cool. So what we're really doing with this rim light, and the reason why it's important to do it, and the reason why it actually matters more than where the light source is, and the realism of the light source is. Again, we're going for speed, and we're going for clarity, which I don't really think I've talked a whole lot about clarity in these videos, which is my fault. But clarity is huge. So one of the easiest ways to get clarity with tone is to put black against white, put gray against white. Having your whites and your darks play off against each other, so that you don't have a lot of like a big mud puddle. Like you have nice clear delineation between the black areas and the white areas, which is why these nice big blocky black chunks of shadow are staying away from the hair, which is also black. And mine's a little bit cleaner, not cleaner, but a little sparser, we'll say, than Ito's. But even over here in Ito's, where the background's busier, you can see that he largely stayed away from the blacks of the hair with the shadows and pulled motifs from down for where they're going to interplay with the arm, or they're going to interplay with the dress. So you get that kind of great clarity there. And the rim light on this is great because, again, like I said, this is all one tone between the front and the back, and you delineate that separation of foreground background by cutting the shape of the figure out of the gray in a rim light. So that's why that is the way that is, and that's why we're duplicating this here. And that, I feel, is something that is really effective about this style, and one of the reasons why I want to learn more about how to employ it. So I feel like what we've done there is pretty much enough in terms of like pulling her out of the background. Now, there's a couple different things we're going to do. And like you notice down here, this kind of nice, Ito really manages to pull foreground, midground, background with just one layer of tone. And the real question is, how can Brendan Albetski steal that? See, I've painted myself into a corner a little bit, because this nice highlight, this nice bit here, mine, I don't have that. So I really can't make that rock white like this one is, because it's not going to play with the hand in the same way. I can do it over here. But I'm going to have a more difficult time doing it over here. And so we go back to the ink a little bit. And I left my layers unlocked. You remember at the start of the video how I was like, we're going to lock this folder. It's really important that we lock this folder so that we can't draw on it anymore. Never listen to early video, Brendan. He doesn't know what he's talking about yet. we're just going to fill that in like this. Because we're not going to get it exactly like Ito has it. A couple of reasons being, one, the panel's a different size. Two, the composition is slightly different. Three, there is no three. But we can grab the spirit, right? We can't hit it exactly, but we can grab the spirit. It's all about the spirit. I'm gonna I'm gonna commit a faux pas. Oh dear. That's gonna bother me so much. Do you see it? Do you see why? Do you see why that bothers me? The foolish things that I have done. My many sins. Alright, so we're going to change it so that's breaking the plane of the dress at least. It's stuntier. It's not as flowing, but I think it looks better compositionally that way. I always talk about the process as being broken up really blockily into like pencil, ink, tone, color, letter, in that order. And once you finish one, you're done. Not true, as you can see. I've gone back to my ink layer a couple of times to make some changes for the benefit of the piece as a whole. Yep. I think that'll do her. So the question now becomes, is this it? Because we could do, I talked about 20 and 40 before for our opacity of our tone layers. It's actually 20 and 20 in a lot of cases because my darker layer is going to go over my lighter layer, and I'm only actually going to do darker tone over the lighter tone areas. So to get 40, 20 plus 20 is 40. And if I did 40, it would actually be 60. Now, Ito didn't do this, but we could tone up. And I'll just do some block areas because it's not really necessary. It doesn't really make the drawing look all that much better, and it takes more time. And he gets some more texture in here because these are screen tones. And I am not 100% certain if Ito does traditional artwork or if he does digital. I think at this time he was doing traditional. You know, it's interesting. I actually know, I'm almost certain that he was doing traditional at this time. And the reason I say that is because I recall reading, I think Censor is his first book that he did with digital. So I think that this was done with traditional tools. But we're going to see what we can do with screen tones. I don't really do a lot with screen tones, so I don't really know how the tools work. But there's a button, Clip Studio, and turns your layer into a screen tone. And I can set them to circle. I can set them to square. It's got that nice manga texture. Give it that. Lozenge. Line. Oh. All kinds of fun options. Well, I kind of like the line. Let's see what else we've got. Cross. Ellipse. Noise. I don't like noise. Sugar plum. Asterisk. Star. Carrot. Cherry round. Cherry mid. What makes that cherry mid? Explain to me. Cherry thin. Alright, these are all kind of... We're getting into who cares territory here. I liked line, even though it's not image accurate, but I think in terms of like tone, that might be what I'm talking about. I liked line and I liked... What did the master use? Those look like squares to me. They're not touching. Circle. I like line the best. So kind of look at it out here from the thumbnail, right? Boom, 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 boom. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I like the screen tone. It just adds a certain level of texture that is not quite present in the flat gray. And it's like production value almost. And if I turn the density of it up, yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, we're looking to be different. We're looking to do something different. I'm going to go with this. I'm going to try this out. I just got to kind of figure out what... I think I'm going to stick to that 20% rule. It's because I don't really trust myself when it comes to judging by my eye the opacity of it, so I'll stick to the rules on that. All right, cool. I've seen now, learning on these processes, right? Learning how to make a video. My recording tool, I see I have down here 40 minutes. I've been talking about this. Okay, lettering, and then we're done. I'm going to start a new folder for lettering. I usually put in the letters first and then do the bubbles around them. That way you know. But do I want to do it by hand? My handwriting is terrible. Maybe I can learn something about speed, right? I keep talking about wanting to do the speed, and then I keep picking things like, I'm going to handcraft this very slowly. So we're going to do it by speed. I use a lot of Blambot fonts. Nate Picos is a god to us all. Blambot.com is an amazing website for the independent cartoonist. There are a lot of pay fonts, which are fantastic. And there are also a lot of free fonts that are fantastic and are approved for indie comics use and for personal use. So if you don't already know about Blambot, definitely go check it out. And it's a really great way to kind of up your lettering game really simply. And Nate also does a lot of, he's got a lot of how-to books. He's a fantastic letterer. And he's got a lot of great how-to books about learning how to letter and how to be a better letterer. And I need to read some of those books because I'm not a very good letterer, but I'm all right. I do okay. I know the basic rules. So when I'm doing my lettering, get all these inks and tones into a folder so I can turn everything blue. Boom! And we're going to go back to front because it's manga. I use Anime Ace 3 is the font that I usually use. It's not going to be the same as what Ito's got, but that's okay. We're going to bump it up to the 18. It's pretty close. It's going to be a problem. My panel's not big enough. That's all right. And I'm like, well, we're gonna use Anime Ace 3 from Blambot.com. It's not the same as what Ito used. No, it's not, because he wrote it in Japanese. So it doesn't really matter, does it? I can do whatever I want. So that's visible from a distance. And now here's a fun life hack. And I've been told you shouldn't do this. But I think it looks cool. Is to butt your speech bubbles against white. So, typically speaking, when you have a dialogue bubble, you want the dialogue chunk of it to appear in the center of the bubble. You want it to take roughly the shape of a diamond, and you want to kind of contour your bubble to accommodate that diamond. That's the general rule of thumb. So when you're butting against white space, though, kind of some of it is, the full shape of the dialogue bubble it becomes implied. So, I can break out of the panel a little bit with these. And after I do this, I'll decide if it was a good idea or not. Clip Studio has good dialogue tools that I don't use. That honestly, I used them on Circuit Champ for the first time, and I realized that I'm dumb and was not aware of some of the finer points of those tools, and so that's why I hadn't used them in the past, and that they're actually very good, very strong. And it did speed up my lettering on that book, so something I'll probably try to work more with in the future. But for today, because I'm doing something weird here, I'm not going to do that. Now, I don't really like the way this looks because they are breaking, these words are breaking out of my implied panel even. So I'm going to bring them back in here. I'm going to reduce the size of my text a little bit. I'm gonna look something up on my phone real quick. Interesting. Okay, so what I was looking up on my phone just now, I went into my digital copy of Tomie because I wanted to check out this panel. Because when I did find this panel, I found it on just by searching for Tomie panels, and it occurred to me that perhaps what I picked out might not have been what the panel looked like in the book, and it's a little bit different. But you can see there's a border around it in the actual panel, and you can see that the dialogue's a little bit different. Otherwise, it is pretty much the same. I don't know why they changed it. Anyways, remember at the beginning of this when I said I think the story is called Ocean, or I think the story is called Beach or something? No, this story is called Boy, which is much more disturbing. If you're not familiar with Tomie, I do recommend reading it. It is a horror. It is rather gory at times. So if you're not into that sort of stuff, maybe leave it be. But it's compelling stuff. But in the actual manga, this line is not "me, I am Tomie." It's "me, I am his mother, Tomie." So I'm going to change it. To match the version of the manga that I have. I'm not sure why it's different. Maybe because the line "I am his mother, Tomie" is considerably more disturbing. That might have something to do with it. But like I said, this story is about a boy child who finds Tomie washed up on a beach, and she manipulates him like she manipulates everybody, but she manipulates him into getting him to refer to her as his mother, and then flipping that emotional connection on him and turning him into a murderer and stealing kind of his innocence and his mind from him. So creepy lady. Creepy lady does bad things. All right. Again, my panel is slightly different in size. And so my bubbles need to do a little bit more work to fit properly. That's on me. That's my fault. I did that. But I think we can still make it look good, right? Balloon tails theoretically supposed to come from the center of the bubble. That one's a little bit off, but I think it looks good, so we're going to leave it. Same with this one. And it's a little close to the hair. We can fix it. We can fix everything. So I gotta kind of get the thickness of the line of the tail to match the thickness of the bubble itself, and I made these bubbles pretty thick actually. I like bold lines, right? Cool. And now because we are going to, I use a line tool here to make this faster, because again, I want to keep talking about how I want to do these things faster. Get these to match the lines of the panel, and then we can select inside, bump out the width a little bit, fill them in with white, turn this back to its normal color, and bing bang boom. That's it, we're done. So interested to know how long this would have taken me if I hadn't talked the entire time. But I think we learned a couple of things about how to, do this process, and even still looking at it, it's like, oh, there's a couple of things here or there that I could touch up more. I think I could do the scarring on the arms a little bit more heavily to kind of match the way it is in the drawing. But we're nitpicking at this point. In terms of producing something that matches style more or less with the original, that matches the spirit of the original, and learning a couple things about using tone and stuff that I think is going to really kind of pick up my pace on doing black and white things in the future. So all in all, I call it a success. I hope that you enjoyed watching the process of it. If you have another panel, color, black and white, whatever you like, you just want to see me draw it, send it my way and we can do a series on it. Can be from anything, pretty much, more or less, subject to my approval, of course. If you enjoyed the series, of course, like, comment, subscribe, leave me a comment below, tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like, and we will make some more interesting videos in this vein in the future. This is the first kind of finished little sequence on the channel, and I'm looking forward to learning all kinds of new things and discovering them with you throughout this whole process. So thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.